Okay, hi everyone. I'm really excited today to be here with Tam Kroeker, who is the founder of Enneagram Aware, and she is a specialist in bringing self-awareness to teams and organizations. And Tam is also the heading up the initially to officially form an Enneagram Canada, which is so exciting to be part of an Enneagram international community. So welcome, Tam. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. I'm really excited to be here. Thanks for that introduction.
Yeah, so really what I had invited Tam to chat about today is an introduction to the Enneagram. So basically, the Enneagram 101 for people that may not be really familiar with what it is, why it's helpful to know about it, how can we learn more about it, and how it can help us in our personal growth, our relationships, and in terms of just having a deeper self awareness and understanding ourselves. So, Tam, can you tell us from your experience what is the Enneagram?
Um, I've been asked this question before. I feel like it's the question I answer most often, especially for organizations that have dabbled in certain personality types, but maybe are unfamiliar with this one. I think the word Enneagram sometimes throws people off, but it is really a Greek word that means drawing of nine or figure of
Mm,
nine. And so
mhm,
I think that actually tells us a lot about what the Enneagram is. The Enneagram is saying it appears that there are nine ways to move through the world, or there are nine perspectives on how to tackle problems and make decisions in the world. And so, what I like about the Enneagram, some personality tests have like four options. And that's great for that initial, let's figure out why we're not getting along at work type of discussion. But for those of us that have realized that there's maybe a bit more nuance to it than that, it's really nice that the Enneagram shows us that not only are there nine views on the world, but there are nine unique views on the world. And if we
mm,
had 10, we would repeat one of those nine. So the Enneagram, on its very basic level, is just saying we all see the world a little differently, but there seem to be
mm,
patterns, which is why we get along with certain people more than others.
Okay, so
That
tell
give
us
a
then.
good, does that give a good enough introduction to it?
Yes, and we're gonna dive deeper
Sure.
into about the Enneagram and why it's so helpful.
Sure.
So tell us then, how did you get interested in the Enneagram? How did it show up in your life?
I was in a time in my life where I was trying to figure myself out. And I don't know that I knew that's what I was doing at the time. But I was listening to lots of podcasts. I was doing a lot of my own internal processing. Journaling had just become a thing for me. And I wouldn't have called it self awareness work or self development, but I was curious. And so, in my path down all these podcasts, one of the podcasts I listened to, their community was doing an Enneagram test. And it was the
Mm,
first time I'd heard about it. So, I got the book that they recommended. The first book I ever read was The Road Back to You by Ian
mhm,
Morgan and Suzanne Stabile. Fabulous
yeah.
book as a starter.
Mhm,
And I read through what I loved about it, and this is how I teach the Enneagram as well, is that they have 20 statements that if you were this type, they would resonate with you. And so I read through, they started at eight, 8, 9, 1, all the way to seven. I started with eight. I definitely wasn't an eight. But then in very classic nine style, I assumed I was every single number after that. So it was a journey to see that I was in
mhm,
fact um, using my nineness to try and adapt to all of those things. Like even the discovery
mhm,
of finding who I was through the Enneagram was worth that process. So it was more than just, you're this number, here's some interesting stuff. It was even a process of, am I this number? Why do I think I'm this number? This number kind of fits, but I can't figure out why it fits. So going back to why the Enneagram's so cool is that it goes with you in your discovery process instead of
Mhm.
saying, take this quick test, yes or no, black or white. It's not like that. I've actually met lots of people who struggle to find their number along the way because it's all about figuring out and shining a lens into some of the places you're not used to looking.
Yeah, I love that you recommended that book too, because it's often a book I'll recommend, The Road Back to You,
Yep.
as a really good place to start in terms of it's both accessible, it's entertaining,
Yep.
it's just a really great book. And I know the first time I read that book as well, like you, I it was almost it was an epiphany or an awakening in and of itself to
Yep.
realize that not everybody sees the world the way I do.
Yep.
And that just even that sense of like, first, I have to get deeper awareness about how do I see the world
Yep.
and what are my patterns and
Yep.
habits that I wasn't aware of. And then after that, wow, how other people see the world. So I think that's interesting. We both resonate with that as a place, at least as a place to start.
Absolutely. And I think
Mhm.
my biggest epiphany in it was that when I really started looking at the traits of the nine, I really struggled to own my own traits. And I didn't realize that that was a personality trait. To struggle to own your own traits, can be listed as a personality trait. And so I've even heard other nines say, I've done all these other personality tests and I'm never a number, or I'm never a color, or I'm never a whatever. They don't
Right.
fit for me. And the Enneagram really recognizes that that is a particular motivation or a particular view of the world. And I think that comes from this long history of studying humans and realizing that us nines are out there too.
So you've just mentioned something that is kind of my next question to explore is you mentioned other personality types.
Mm,
And we know that there's obviously other personality types out there that people do either as part of their work or they'll do individual just as an individual because they want to understand themselves better, whether it's the big five or it's Myers-Briggs or
yeah,
which I think I know I've done all of those things too.
sure.
But I say but the Enneagram felt and is different.
Mm,
So can you say more about how the Enneagram is different? And I'm assuming that you have found it really helpful. So how is it different? And how is it really helpful to understand or through kind of understanding our Enneagram?
sure. I will first say that I am a proponent of any system or test or anything that fits for you. So if DISC is something that you find a lot of knowledge, freedom, communication styles, all that fits for you, then that I have nothing against any of those personality systems, because I think the Enneagram specifically, I think finds you when you're really ready for it. And so I
Mhm.
certainly found that if I had found it maybe a few years prior, I think I would have just passed over it. I mean, maybe I did find it a couple years prior. But what I think sets the Enneagram apart and what really got me at the time when I found it is that um, it's not that it is, how do I best say this? It really feels like it sees you. And
Mhm.
it doesn't just show you your strengths, and it doesn't just beat you up. It really allows you to be incredibly human. And part of that is because of the long history of contributors and wisdom teachings and traditions that have contributed to this work. And so what I find is things like Disc and Myers-Briggs are trying to reduce some of that wisdom from all the years because they're looking at it likely from one founder's perspective or maybe a team's perspective versus this system that has probably been around much longer than we have writings about it, but certainly has been around at least 100 years in some of the ways we can trace it. So I find the Enneagram, it doesn't shy away from the tough stuff, but it also doesn't shame you for some of the tough stuff. And it
Mhm.
is an incredibly inviting system. That being said, it does sting you sometimes. So you have to be prepared for that too.
Right, because we see these things. So would you also say this is accurate, or would you agree with this? Because I'm not as familiar with all the other personality types, and my work has really been to dive in to the
Mhm,
Enneagram because that's what called me. That's what's been so transformative, even though, to be honest, at first I was resistant
mhm,
because I did not want to be in a box.
mhm.
Um, and we can come back to that box perspective
Sure.
barrier in a minute. But I think what drew me so deeply was um, it helps us to see, even though, like as you said, oh, this is not always easy to see
Mhm,
because we kind of have our blinders on to see.
mhm,
Um, our habits, our habit of our what motivates us, our habits of thinking,
mhm.
feeling, behaving that are based on our need to survive. That's our personality
Mhm.
enabled us to survive, but kind of prevents us from over time growing and thriving.
Yes.
But it also shows a path, a
Mm,
path of a way forward. So it
mm,
shows us maybe the ways that we need to disappear to ourselves when we were younger, and each of the nine types has their own way that they've had to kind of um,
Adapt.
adapt. But also, how do we grow from here? What is a growth path? So I because into personal growth and development, and of course my bringing it into meditation and mindfulness world is we're always growing and evolving. And when we can do it intentionally, that can become our superpower. So
Absolutely.
would you also, is that a fair way to say one of the benefits is that growth path? And
Absolutely. I
yeah,
think the Enneagram is so good at showing you so many ways you can grow, like showing you I think a lot of us wish that there was just a clear checklist, and you can honestly,
right.
Enneagram allows for some of that. Like, you know, discover your type first and then lean into your wings and then use your arrows for growth. Like there is actually a decent checklist involved in the Enneagram
Right.
and behind the scenes in the Enneagram theory if you get into it. But I think what I love most about it is that the Enneagram also accounts for um, any experience in your life. It is like a symbol of all and everything. And it is I find when I do, let's say, a typing interview with someone, they'll tell me a story about being stressed out about this, and then they'll tell me something about their parent over here. And there's actually the way that the symbol is connected internally, you start seeing all those patterns. So not
Mhm.
only do you see why maybe something happened the way that it did, but you can also see how to not undo it, but the understanding of it gives you so much freedom and gives you so
Mhm.
much ability to say, oh, so when I feel that again, like if, in my case, fear comes up because I'm connected to the Enneagram 6. When I start feeling that internal problem solving start, it's almost always a clue to me, I think you're stressed out. And then I can choose
Okay.
to think about it differently, or I can have compassion for myself because I'm clearly moving into a more stressed out space. So, absolutely, the
Mhm.
Enneagram provides very clear paths for growth. Absolutely. At any level,
And
I think.
and I love how the Enneagram it's used and adapted by many different teachers through many different lenses, and they all have their own little way of working with it, which is
Yep.
makes it even more rich in terms
Yep.
of the depth that we can go into. But
Yep.
I love what you just said because I think that's really important for people. Like you talked even about stress and people, we have global stress. Like
Mm,
people already had stress and COVID, there was stress, and now we have stress, and life is stressful. And so, even how you identified how it can be a powerful tool to start, we we have habitual ways of
Cope.
responding and coping with stress
Yes.
that
Yeah.
we might not be aware of until we're aware. And so
Yeah.
Enneagram aware, like your like your business. Um, so the thing is, and the other word you said that I just want to pull out is freedom.
Mm,
And what would you say to people like me who used to believe at first, like, I do not like anything that's going to put me in a box? Like,
yep.
and maybe because the deeper part of me is like needs freedom,
Yep.
is needs freedom, doesn't want to be put in a box. So I don't want to be typed in a box.
Yes.
So a lot of people might be resistant to the Enneagram,
Yeah,
understandably, because
absolutely.
I do not want to be labeled and in a box.
That's
So
right.
what would you say to that?
Well, what I would first say is people do that. So it's a legitimate fear. I know a lot of people who learned the Enneagram and then just typed all their friends. And me too. I did it too. So I think that I've heard a lot of stories about the Enneagram being weaponized. Oh, you're such a nine. What you're doing right now is such an eight thing. I can't believe you would do that to me. And so there is that side of it, and I think that the fear is very real. But I think that also speaks to the fact that the Enneagram actually it has a lot of truth to it, and that's why some of those things feel really difficult to hear from people. They're just
Hmm.
not said in a very compassionate or empathetic way, and that is not
Hmm.
the design of the Enneagram. The other thing I would say is that all of the teachers that I really follow and respect always say that no has to be an option. And that's how I always do my teaching as well. If the Enneagram doesn't fit for you, you don't have to do it. If the Enneagram, if parts of it fit and fit with your experience, then that's perfect. You should run
Hmm.
with that. What I have started realizing though is that even beyond whether this is a box or it isn't, the most crucial moments for me to experience myself with the Enneagram is when things feel comfortable, or more importantly, feel uncomfortable. And instead of just saying, you're trying to control me, I'm looking for freedom, sitting with that moment of uncomfortability and seeing why I feel that way. Like when someone
Hmm.
is accusatory of, oh, that's such a nine thing. Why do I feel like that's putting me in a box? People can't put you in boxes. It's literally impossible. You are free.
Hmm.
You are free. So when that
Hmm.
happens, that's actually a perfect opportunity to see what else is going on for you, because there's
Hmm.
clearly some red flag that's coming up for you that feels overwhelming.
Yeah, yeah, that's really true. I think, and it might have even been in the book, Wrote Back to You, but other places as well, that really struck out to me about the whole box thing as well was when I read uh, the Enneagram actually shows us how to get out of the box.
Yes,
So it's
exactly.
how to get out of the box that we're already in
Exactly.
that impacts everything, our habits of
Yep.
thinking, feeling, behaving, and so it helps us get out of the box. And I think that, but you can't necessarily get out of it like that. I can't remember who said nothing. I don't remember who said this quote, but nothing is more confining than the prison that you don't know you're in.
Yes,
and
exactly.
and I think that we our personalities are our greatest gifts. They
Mhm.
are those things that are our superpowers, but over time, another teacher had said something about our temple becomes our prison. So what once kept us safe
Absolutely.
becomes our prison, and so the Enneagram helps us to bust out of that box.
Yeah.
So I think it's really great that you've named both the being mindful of not using it to put people in a box, including ourselves. Well, this is the way I am. Well, this
Tough
is
luck.
actually Yeah, no, no, no. This is where I'm starting from, that were habits that enabled me to survive, and I need them, and they can be my superpower if I'm aware,
Yeah.
right? But also how to bust out.
I mean, I think what it just to continue on what you're saying about we don't sometimes realize the cages we're trapped in. I don't know if you know that old parable about two fish swimming,
Mm,
and then there's a fish that goes, "The water's warm today," and the other two fish go, "What's he talking about? What's water?" And I think we
mm,
just really cannot underestimate how comfortable we have gotten with a very specific way of being, like the concept of autopilot. And what the Enneagram does is it often shows us where our autopilot systems are in
mhm.
place in ways that probably aren't benefiting us the way that we think that they are. And so that's why I think people feel labeled or feel like someone's putting them in a box because they're pointing out something that is difficult to see sometimes, makes us uncomfortable. It was our safe place for so long, and so it feels scary. And so that's totally fair, but we also need to approach those conversations with a lot of compassion and empathy.
Right. Oh, that's really true. So,
Mm,
so I'm going to just bring us into one level of a deeper understanding about the Enneagram and the nine types or lenses through which we see the world without getting into all the depth, because there's so much depth and people spend can and rightfully so spend their whole life
yes.
studying and learning and different lenses and different teachers and different. So we have nine types, and the types are really about our core motivation, like what, not why we do or what, but what motivates us.
Right.
And so we also know in the Enneagram, we have personalities, we have three centers of intelligence.
Mm,
And I mean, that was something for me personally, who was very involved in meditation and mindfulness. And, there's um, four foundations of mindfulness:
mm,
mindfulness of the thoughts, of feelings, and the body.
mm,
And of course, then realizing, okay, there's three centers of intelligence. And isn't that interesting how
mm,
those three centers are also very much aligned with three of the four foundations of mindfulness?
yeah.
So say more about what are the centers of intelligence as
Mm.
it relates to the Enneagram, and why is it a helpful foundational piece of the Enneagram?
I mean, I love the centers of intelligence. I have found so much freedom and so much understanding of myself in those areas because they feel very true to me and true to my life experience. So the concept of the three centers of intelligence is that we have all three. Sometimes we're more intellectual and we want to strategize and we want to have pros and cons lists and we want to be very methodical about how we move through the world and make decisions. Sometimes we lead with feelings. When we feel things, we do something about it. Or that's sometimes how we connect to other people. And then sometimes we just feel like we need to do something, but we can't explain to anybody why we have to do it. It's like this gut, like, it's a gut reaction. It's like, I don't know why, but this is what I'm doing right now, or this is how I'm going to solve this problem. So what I've found is that so that would be the mind intelligence, the heart intelligence, and the body. And what I've
Mhm.
found to be very true for me, I lead more with the body intelligence. Eight, nines, and ones typically lead more with body intelligence. I found that it was really helpful for me to hear that those three different centers existed, but that I was sometimes trying to be a feeler or be a thinker, but ultimately I was still using my body intelligence to do those other things. So
Mm,
I would, I wouldn't, I don't have a ton of experience feeling emotions, but then my neck would start hurting when I was feeling stressed about something.
mm,
And I started realizing that my body was trying to feel, but it didn't know how to do it. So what I love about the
Mhm.
centers of intelligence is that not that we can't have access to all three, but likely we have been overusing one of our centers in a way that has created more stress on our bodies, probably, or more stress on our thinking, because we've been attempting to do the job of another center with one that we're more
Mm.
comfortable with. So
Mm.
I find them hugely beneficial, even just as practical tools for growth. So, for example, I used to sit with a feelings wheel because I didn't know what feelings were. So I would sit with my feelings wheel and try feelings on because I didn't even have the vocabulary for them. When I think about my mind center and using that one, mind-centered people who lead with that, they can come up with 10 solutions. I never come up with 10. I might come up with two. So when I'm trying to engage my mind center, when I drive home, I'll think, what are three different ways that I could drive home? I don't need to pick all three. I don't need to try all three, but what are the three I could pick, and which one am I going to pick today? So it's just these easy ways to incorporate more flexibility into your life, to incorporate new ways of using your mind. Or I guess we should call it something different, using your intellect in different ways.
So I think that's such a powerful layer in terms of one of the gifts the Enneagram brings is knowing that we all have three centers, but depending on what type we lead with,
Yep.
one of them dominates. It's like the three-legged stool, and one of the legs is bigger. The other two, aren't. And so even bringing awareness, and I know
Yeah.
it helped me understand both myself, which was obviously key,
Mm-hmm.
but even in the people I was teaching meditation and mindfulness to, I didn't a lot of times at that point, I didn't know about the Enneagram, and yet I would see these patterns in people that, okay, why is this person struggling with their mind in this way?
Mm-hmm.
Why is this person disconnected from their anger in this way? Like,
Mm-hmm.
why is this person more emotionally in tune and connected and sometimes lost in emotion and not able to think through,
Yeah.
things? So it really is almost a miracle, really, to have that level of awareness and knowledge and understanding and a framework that helps us to see these things more clearly.
Well, and I actually find it starts to show up, especially in your relationships when you're trying to make decisions with somebody. And you've got somebody, body types are typically quicker to make decisions. So even just saying that a body type is quicker to make decisions, we probably all have somebody in our minds that slows us down or someone who's trying to
Mhm,
push us along quicker than we're ready for. That is
mhm,
explained by the centers of intelligence because there are just different things you're considering when you're making decisions. And I find the centers of intelligence is crucial to understanding why people make the decisions that they make, or I guess I
mm,
should say how they make the decisions. One of the exercises I often do in workshops is I ask people to imagine a beach. And that's all I say. And then I draw a few conclusions because everybody does something different very naturally and very organically in their mind when they're using their imagination. Body types are almost always moving. They're walking on the beach. They have a very clear visual of what that looks like, and it's it feels physical. You can smell the ocean, you can feel
mm,
sand. And even as I'm saying that,
mm,
body types can do that.
mm,
Heart types are almost exclusively the ones that have other people in their vision. I don't have
mm,
people in my vision, but heart types almost always do. And
mm,
they have a feeling about it. They like it's more than just feeling the sun. They go, "Oh, that was so fun," or I wish I could go back there." Their heart is very engaged in that process. And then mind types are often more connected to the words or descriptions around what they're doing than the actual visual element of it. They just have a lot going on more intellectually, like details. They're planning a trip, they're asking questions. So it's just a perfect window into we're all different, but none of them are wrong. That was a natural way for you to experience a situation. It's so helpful.
Yeah, I love that. How you said people can be in the same situation on a beach,
Yeah,
but experience it through a different center of intelligence and a different
yes,
experience. And
yes.
I think that's such a beautiful example. So as we're how can people we learn more about the Enneagram, learn more about their type? We talked about a book that we have both found really helpful, The Road Back to You.
Yep.
Where do tests fit into it? There's lots of online tests, there's free tests, there's so what would be a practical way for people who want to learn more about the Enneagram to explore it? What would you recommend?
I always recommend a couple things. The first thing is to exactly what you said, find a book and read. Because there is actually, when it comes to learning about self, there is no end to that. A
Mhm.
test can't tell you self. A test is just a tool, just like everything else. So I am not anti-tests, but I am cautious about tests being the answer or being the ultimate decider on some of those things. I actually used to take tests all the time, any free test I could find because I was worried I wasn't a 9. And ultimately, even when I got the test back and it said you're a 9, I was still worried about that. So it was still something I needed to discover internally for myself. So I actually find there's quite a few websites that have fabulous information. My website has information if you want to read from there, but also the CP Enneagram website, the Integrative 9 website. They all will have their own lens for you to read. And just as we were saying earlier, there is no end to everyone's got a new perspective on how they teach the Enneagram, and there's something new to learn or to disagree with. That is should be part of your process is saying, no, that doesn't fit for me. So find websites to read. There's lots of great ones out there. There are some that you should obviously use your critical thinking about. I don't have any issue with tests. I think they're helpful, especially ones that give you a report afterwards that you can read a lot about. I use the Compass Enneagram test through CP Enneagram, and I find it really accurate and great. And then the one thing we talked about earlier was around typing interviews. And those are obviously, they're more of an investment, but they're obviously the most personal way for you to tackle the question of what's my Enneagram type. Because an interview is 1 hour of a coach asking you a bunch of questions and then giving you a couple of suggestions of what Enneagram number they think they see in your answers and where you can go with that. So it's more than just what's your number. It is an experience that you get to kind of see where your Enneagram number has been playing out throughout your life and throughout your history. So that's my favorite way of doing it.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with the test. I think there's so many people I've noticed will explore a typing interview when they've either completed a test and it doesn't quite feel right, or okay, now what do I do with this? Or they have done a couple tests and they get different numbers and there's a lot. It's not easy. So I
Mhm.
just for some people they might read even something in the book and they'll just know right off,
Yep,
okay, this is how I see the world. This is
yep.
how my personality or ego structures. But then there's those of us who, you know,
It doesn't
don't.
fit.
It
Yep,
it took me a long time
yep,
of exploring in different books and different this and relooking at my patterns and to come up with, oh, this is truly how I so being patient with ourselves too is, and I love how you said it's a lifelong journey. It is the beginning of
yes.
it's the beginning. It's not like,
No,
okay,
and
yeah.
I did actually I did a workshop recently where someone emailed me and said that's not my type, that's not my type, and I had to say again, taking tests is actually part of the journey. So when it
Yes.
isn't your number, that's perfect. Now you know that's
Yes.
not your number. That's actually a huge nugget of information for you. Why? Why is it not your number? So when you can take the time to ask the whys behind it, why does this fit? Or better yet, why does this not fit? Those pieces are all helpful in you realizing what is it about that that doesn't fit or does.
Right. Wonderful. I think that's a great way, at least for me, to wrap up the questions I was going to ask you. Is there any final nuggets or words of wisdom that you'd like to share before we close off our Enneagram chat today?
I think that what's coming to me is just how much I love how the Enneagram is very invitational. That it is not meant to be a right or wrong journey. There aren't better or worse types, and that
Mm.
you are a great version of yourself, and the Enneagram can help you see how great you are.
Oh, I love it. I love us ending there. Tam, thank you so much for being here today. And people can reach out through your website at EnneagramAWARE. And thank you for being here. It was
Thank
great
you.
chatting about the Enneagram.
You too. Thank you.